Get with it or get gone.
Hey you guys, and welcome back to my channel. And this shit girl J Pineapple out here on the scene with my girl, you know, the redheaded queen, CC Bad or whatever. And we out here tonight doing what again, sis? A spooky sister ghost tour. Okay, so we're here on this ghost tour and I'm just basically gonna vlog it. But yeah, so we're basically just gonna see all the spooky things. There's currently a curtain behind me, or my big head in nowhere. I think it's this one. There's a curtain behind me moving currently in this abandoned church. So there's that, probably haunted. It's moving and nobody's in there. We haven't even started the tour yet. But before we get into the actual video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be notified every time I post a new video. So let's get on with the spooky season festivities. Let's get it. Let's go.
Now, why it happens officially, I cannot give you an explanation for, because as I said, I am not here to convince you one way or another about the existence of ghosts. But if by the end of the tour, after hearing my stories and seeing the things you might capture in the pictures you took, if you should begin to believe in ghosts, that's strictly up to you folks. All right? Now, do we have any fans of the Ghost Hunters on TV, or was it Ghost Adventures that's on now? Or
I watch BuzzFeed.
Same.
Okay.
BuzzFeed Unsolved.
Okay, well, this is not a ghost hunt. All right, that's not what we're out here to do. This is a ghost tour. I have stories to tell you tonight, and it's going to be important to me to get through those stories tonight. But it doesn't mean I can't let you guys have a little fun while you're out here. Got a few devices that they use on those TV shows to hunt for their spirits, and I'm going to let you guys use them if you want them. I have a device called a spirit box. Spirit box is a scanning radio. Notice I've got it set to scan through the FM radio channels at the rate of 10 channels per second. As it scans through, like I said, it's not on a radio channel for you long enough to hear anything intelligible to come through it. But the theory behind this device is there are white spaces in between each of those channels. And through those white spaces, the spirits can speak. There will be voices that come through sometimes, and sometimes you can tell what they said, but what I need is a volunteer to carry it along and check in, listen in every now and then. There you go. And if you hear something you can tell what they said, let us know. This is called a ghost meter. Actually, the Ghost Meter Pro. Okay, now it's functioning, and when it starts flashing again, that means that there is a spirit somewhere nearby. The faster it flashes, the closer the spirit is. And if it gets right next to you, it'll go solid red, start squawking, making all kinds of racket. Anybody want to volunteer to? Those of you who want to know when to take a picture, watch that device. You can see that one best, and you'll know when somebody's around. And this device is much the same, except it's on a slightly different frequency than that one. Other lights start coming on, spirits around and getting closer and closer the further up it spikes. We have a volunteer for that one. All right. Before I start.
Yay!
Before we head down the street, and I start telling you all these stories, I have something I want to show you just to get you in the mood for what you're about to experience this evening. Keep in mind, what I'm about to show you is a naturally occurring phenomenon. This was not done by any human hand. Follow me down this way, just which it has been since the center section there was built in 1715, making it one of the oldest continuously used churches in all of the Americas. It's also the reason why on the other side of that big brick wall is a very old, extensive, and I might add, active graveyard. To the other side of this big brick wall, you notice there's a tall gravestone right there? A little over halfway up that gravestone, you see the skull face looking back at you. Kind of strange configuration coming out of the grave. In any case, Virginia would have a local county courthouse where you'd be tried for minor crimes and misdemeanors. All felony crimes committed in the colony of Virginia are tried in the courtroom in the Capitol building down there at the end of the street. No matter where in Virginia you committed a felony crime, they would bring you to that courtroom to be tried. And then you might have to sit in the jail across the street from the Capitol building there for up to 3 months waiting for the next trial cycle to come around. Now, Right now, we're only interested in minor crimes and misdemeanors, things you'd be tried for here, like gossiping, drunk in public, unladylike behavior, not attending church on a regular basis. Yeah, they prosecuted that crime more than any other during colonial times. Now, if they found you guilty of a crime in this building, they would charge you a fine. But not everybody's got money to pay fines with in those days. That's why over on the side, they've got pillory stocks and a whipping post. They can find a way to extract their punishment.
Oh, no.
Now, the first story that I've got for you tonight is a story that takes place in the building that had nothing to do with colonial days. Just a couple of blocks over in that direction is the most luxurious accommodations in all of Williamsburg. Williamsburg Inn. But back in 1970, a lady named Isabel Payne came up from Florida to attend a seminar they were holding over at the inn. Now, this is in the summertime. Town's busy, so's the inn. They're fully booked. They're going to bow and curtsy to you. They're not going to tell you you're completely nuts. No, but if you're poor and crazy, that was a whole different story. They had no use for you in that case. They did have a place here for you, though. Big brick building over on Francis Street sits way back off the street. The polite name for the place was the public hospital. Most people just referred to it as the insane asylum. But you only have to worry about that place if you're a poor, crazy person. Wealthy members of the gentry, they didn't have to worry about it at all. So everybody knew this little girl was growing up in here in Williamsburg. She was just not right. But she's royalty, so hands off. But when Lucy got to be about 9 years old, her father moved the family back to England because Mr. Ludwell had 3 daughters. He had no sons. And he knew a good formal education for his daughters was not available here in Virginia. This is an important issue because if somebody doesn't keep Lucy under control, she can be dangerous at times. Now, the house here was built by Lucy's grandfather, and he passed away while they were over in England. And he left the house to Lucy's father, who moved back here with his wife and 2 younger daughters into this house. Back in those days, among these gentry, only the sons inherit a family's estate. Daughters would inherit nothing. Daughters had to marry well to succeed in life in those days, but Mr. Ludwell has no sons. So he left the house to his oldest daughter, Lucy. By British law, any property that a woman owns when she gets married in those days, that property falls under the administration of her husband from the moment they get married. She has no control over it anymore. Unless she outlives her husband, then she gets control back. But that doesn't happen very often. As I told you earlier, men usually live about 10 years longer than women did. Lucy's already married. That meant John Paradise basically just inherited a house here in Williamsburg. Now, as a result, the house goes vacant here in Williamsburg. All these people in Williamsburg see the house sitting vacant. They know about John Paradise and his politics, which they didn't particularly care for, so they decided, well, he obviously doesn't want the house. We'll be happy to take it off his hands. They start using the house for a meeting house, storage, anything they need, they use the house. And Lucy's aware of what's going on because she's got a lot of cousins and a couple of younger sisters here still living in this area. They're sending her letters telling her what the people are doing with their house. But Lucy could care less about that old house in Williamsburg. I live in London now. It is the place to be. She is having the time of her life. So everybody was happy with the situation till about 1796. That's when John Paradise passed away. Not a good thing for London or for Lucy. Immediately after John is dead, Lucy is irritating people all over town. And the final straw for Lucy was one afternoon sitting in a tea house. She overheard a gentleman at another table say something she really didn't particularly care for. It was most likely about her. She got up and went over to the stove, picked up the tea kettle, came back and dumped it in the man's lap, badly scalding him. After that, Lucy wasn't welcome anywhere in London anymore, and so she formulates a plan. She's not stupid, she's crazy. She starts writing letters to an old family friend back here in Virginia that she thought might know somebody here in the Williamsburg area that would have enough influence to help her get her house back. Turns out the guy she was writing the letters to had all the influence she needed. His name was Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson got Lucy permission to move back into the family home. So when she gets back to Williamsburg, she's house rich. But she doesn't have enough money left to be able to support herself in this house, not to mention servants, food, and clothing. However, she would not have stayed in this building because it wasn't here in colonial days. This house was actually built just after the Revolutionary War, and that makes it a rarity here. But there wasn't anything here during colonial days, so they allowed this one to stay here. This is another spot where lots of people on my tours get strange things in their pictures, but unlike the Mary Sith house, all our research here has come up completely empty. We have no idea why those things are happening here. We have searched and searched for 8 years now trying to figure out why these odd things keep popping up in photographs. But so far, the only explanation I can give you is a spooky looking old house. 18th century decided he'd had his fill of this and he was going to put a stop to it. Assigned to protect the Chesapeake Bay and talks to the commander of the sloop, a man named Lieutenant Maynard. He says, "You're going to solve this problem for us. You're going to sail down to the Outer Banks of North Carolina and capture Edward Teach and bring him back here so that we can make an example." Then they sailed on up to Yorktown and they marched those 15 men down here to Williamsburg and they put them in this jail right here. They held an interrogation. After the interrogation was over, they turned 2 of the men loose. One of them was a man named Samuel Odell. Back in those days, when the pirates attack your ship, they don't just plunder your cargo, they also plunder your crew. They lose a pirate or 2 each exploit. And that's the choice that Samuel Odell had to make just a couple of days before Lieutenant Maynard showed up down there at the Outer Banks. Through the interrogation, they were able to figure out this guy really doesn't seem to present much of a danger to us. I think we can let him go. And he very quickly changed his vocation from sailor to farmer and lived a much quieter life the rest of his days. But the other guy they turned loose, he was a pirate by the name of Israel Hands. Just as nasty a pirate as Blackbeard. Matter of fact, he had been Blackbeard's first mate. But he decided it was in his best interest to turn evidence against the rest of the crew. Give that courtroom up there all the evidence they needed to convict the rest of those men of piracy and seal their fates. And for that, some interesting information about the governor of North Carolina they were willing to let him go too, with one stipulation. He was not allowed to stay here in the colonies. He was a nasty character. They didn't want him hanging around here. They told him he was not allowed to stay anywhere in the 13 colonies, so they stuck him on a ship, sent him back to England because he was a French citizen. He died a pauper on the streets of London. But before he died, many young men in London would sit down with Israel Hands and buy him a beer and listen to all his stories, writing it all down because he was going to become a famous author with this stuff. But apparently none of those guys turned out to be a very good writer because those stories didn't see the light of day for almost 100 years. That's when another young man collected the stories up and used them to create a book, and Israel Hands became a lot more famous as a fictional character than he'd ever been in real life. He became known as Long John Silver. Treasure Island is a story based on the exploits of the pirate Israel Hands from right here. Now, Robert Louis Stevenson did put a minor character in the book named Israel Hands as a tribute to him, but he's not the guy. Now, the other pirates, 13 of them, we think that's a very appropriate number for this. They were all found guilty of piracy up there on top of the hill. After their sentences were read, they let them back across the street to their jail cells where they had awaited their trials. A couple days later, a man would come down from the cabinet maker's shop, measure each man to see how big to make his coffin. A few days later, another man would show up with their shackles. Each man was put into his shackles. Shackles these men are put into don't have a clasp and lock. They're welded in. Those shackles would never come off again. And in 2 weeks' time, from the day you're found guilty, which is what they felt like was sufficient time for you to get your affairs in order in those days, the ox carts will show up. Each ox cart will have a coffin in the back. Each man will be lit up from his cell set atop his coffin, and they would ride you out Gallows Road. Today we call it Capitol Landing Road. To a place about a mile out from here called Gallows Hill. That's where you'd be hanged under normal circumstances, but these are pirates. They're special. Instead of taking them out to Gallows Hill, they took them out to the banks of the waterfront. Everywhere there's a wharf around here where a ship might dock. They hung a pirate here, they hung a pirate there, left them all to swing in the breeze for 4.5 to 5 months. As a warning to everybody sailing into these waters, this is definitely not the place you want to become a pirate. I think they got the word across. Peyton Randolph was one of Thomas Jefferson's cousins on his mother's side of the family. He had what was considered to be the most extensive library of any single person in all of the Americas, and when he died, Thomas Jefferson got that library. Now, Thomas Jefferson had already amassed quite a library of his own by that point, and those 2 libraries combined together became the beginning of the U.S. Library of Congress. Now, there are 2 hotspots in this house where most of the activity takes place, and they're both in the oldest section of the house, which is from the front door over to the left end. This section of the house was completed in late 1715, early 1716. Now, immediately after it was built, it was purchased by Peyton Randolph's father, Sir John Randolph, who then built this townhouse over here on this side for his in-laws to live in. Today, Colonial Williamsburg Foundation uses the townhouse as a break room for the Colonial Williamsburg employees. But the main house here is an exhibit house that people can tour through during the daytime. And the two Hotspots are both in the old end of the house. First is a red oak paneled bedroom just to the left of the front door on the second floor on the back side of the house. Back in 1961, a woman named Helen Hall Mason would come to Williamsburg to attend a wedding. And she had friends who were still living in this building at that time who had invited her to come stay with them. But the night she arrived, it's late. She was tired because she's been traveling most of the day, and she asked her host and hostess if they minded very much if she went directly to bed. They said, of course not. We'll catch up in the morning. And they showed her up to that beautiful red oak panel bedroom. Miss Mason didn't waste any time. She was in the bed very quickly, fell almost instantly asleep. But she awoke in the middle of the night because she said she felt like someone was summoning her. She could hear somebody calling her name, Helen, Helen. When she opened her eyes, there's a woman at the foot of her bed. At first she thought it was her friend that had come in to check on her, make sure everything's okay. But as her eyes adjusted to the light in the room, she realized this wasn't her friend. This is an older woman dressed in 18th century bed clothing with a mop hat on her head like ladies would wear to bed in those days to keep the bed bugs out of their hair. She's there at the foot of the bed, wringing her hands, pacing back and forth, looking all around like she expects something to happen or somebody to come in. When Ms. Mason realized it wasn't her friend, it wasn't somebody she recognized at all, she did what any of us would have done in a similar situation. She tried to figure out what the heck is going on here. Who are you? What do you want? But the woman wouldn't say anything to her. She wouldn't even look at Miss Mason. All she'd do is pace back and forth, wringing her hands and looking all around. Miss Mason tried several more times to get her attention. Nothing worked. Now that night, the moon had just risen over here in the east, but it was shrouded behind a few clouds. Those clouds suddenly parted, and all of a sudden, moonlight comes spilling in through the east-facing window in that red oak panel bedroom on the back side of the house. Lit the room up so well, Miss Mason could clearly see the bookcase over on the other side of the room, through the lady at the foot of the bed. That's when she realized this was not flesh and blood in front of her. Kind of took her by surprise. She sat bolt upright in bed. But for the first time when she did that, she got the woman's attention. The woman jumped back away from the bed and looked at her for a couple of seconds. But it was only a couple of seconds. Then she went right back into her routine again, wringing her hands, pacing back and forth. But now as she's pacing back and forth, she's slowly moving away from the bed. In about 2 minutes' time, she made it all the way across the room to the bookcase, where she completely dissolved and disappeared. And Miss Mason sat there for a few minutes after this, thinking about what she'd just seen, trying to decide for sure if she had really seen that, or perhaps she'd been dreaming. After she thought about it for a few minutes, she decided, yes, she was pretty sure she had really seen that. But then she did something I find one of the most amazing parts of the entire story. She rolled over and went back to sleep. Next morning, though, she had to decide, should she tell her friends about what she'd seen, or should she just keep this to herself? I mean, you know, if she tells them, they're going to make jokes, poke fun of her. She'll never hear the end of it. Then she thought, no, these are my friends. If I can't tell them, who can I tell?
Exactly.
So she went down to the breakfast table that morning, sat down, told her friends all about this old woman with the wringing hands disappearing. Much to her surprise, her friends were not only not surprised to hear about it, they started apologizing to her. Oh, I'm sorry, we should have told you about her. They'd seen her up there for years. And you put me in there? Now, the other hot spot is at the end of the house here. There's a narrow staircase down at this end that the servants used to use to go up and down stairs in colonial times. Main staircase for the families here in the middle, nice and wide. But the servants always use this narrow staircase down at the end. One morning, there's a costumed interpreter from Colonial Williamsburg in the house, making sure the maintenance department has done their job properly and cleaned the house up before people start coming in. She's upstairs checking out the second floor. It looks good. So she comes to the staircase to come down. As she starts down the stairs, she notices there's a gentleman sitting in a chair at the bottom of the steps, dressed in 18th century clothing. And she thought, oh, good. They sent another guide out to help me today. That's a good thing. There are no special programs around here. There's going to be a ton of people in the house. I was hoping they wouldn't make me do it alone. So she's coming down the steps telling this guy how happy she is to see him. She made it about halfway down when he stood up, turned around, looked her straight in the eye, and promptly vanished right before her eyes. Yeah. There was another costumed interpreter in the house one morning, doing decorations for Christmas time. Now, Christmas in colonial days was no big deal. It's just another day with an extra ceremony they got to go sit for at the church. She's upstairs dancing around, singing Christmas carols while she's doing her job. She's enjoying herself. She's finished upstairs. She comes to the staircase to come down to the first floor, and as she descends down the stairs singing away, she notices the guide sitting in the chair at the bottom of the steps, just swaying back and forth with the Christmas carols she was singing, and thought, oh, that's just wonderful. Somebody's enjoying me instead of telling me to shut my mouth and stop singing. She comes down the stairs, she's singing away. She gets past the lady with her 2 big sacks, and once she gets past her, she looks back to make sure she didn't disturb the lady. There wasn't a soul sitting in that chair. One morning, the lady from the maintenance department comes walking in that side door over there to do the cleanup in the house. As she walks in, she sees a guy at the top of the stairs she hasn't seen for a couple of years. Come back, and they ask Colonial Williamsburg if they can get their old job back. If they were good employees when they were here before, Colonial Williamsburg is usually very happy, and that's assume what's going on here this morning. Maintenance lady walks in, sees her at the top of the stairs, and says, oh, hey, you came back to work. I'm so glad. You're always one of my favorite guys here. The guy didn't say a word to her. She just turned and walked off down the hallway upstairs. The maintenance lady didn't think anything about it. She just went on with her job. A few minutes later, the door opens up again. Another guy came walking in the door, and the maintenance lady looked at her and said, I didn't expect to see you. I thought so-and-so would be the guide for the house today. The other guy looked at her kind of funny and said, why would you think that? She said, well, you know, she used to be the guide for the house all the time a couple of years ago. The other guy says, yeah, I know, but there's no way she'll be in this house today. The maintenance lady says, yeah, she's right upstairs. Go say hello. The other guy jumped back and said, what? No way. No, you don't understand. You didn't see this morning's paper, did you? She's on the obituary page. She died 2 days ago. There have been all kinds of things reported out of this house. They hear noises in here constantly. Noise they hear most often is heavy-booted footsteps in the hallway. People in the house at the time stick their head out of the room they're in to see who in the world's making all that commotion in the hall. But as soon as their head goes through the door jamb, the noise stops. There's nobody out there. Sometimes they hear spurs jingling on the boots. Another sound they hear quite often is the sound of breaking glass. And I don't mean like somebody dropped a drinking glass or knocked out one of those little window panes. This is more like one of those big fancy mirrors that hang on the wall in there, smashing onto the floor into a million pieces. People run into the room to see what in the world's just happened, but when they get there, they don't find any glass. They don't usually even find anything out of place. We know that there have been at least 3 suicides in this house. There may have been more. There is a whole long list of people that died in this house during colonial days. It's longer than any other 3 houses in town combined. And with all these people dying here, we don't even know why most of them died. Medical science wasn't far enough advanced to figure it out in those days. Nothing was ever written down about what happened to them. And there's all kinds of nasty rumors about it here because the Randolphs, particularly Mrs. Randolph, was known to be very unkind to their slaves. Several of their slaves were known to put curses on the family. And those of us who've been doing tours around here for the length of time, we understand that just adds to the excitement in the house. And every one of us have had our experiences with this place. I can tell you the first thing I noticed about this house when I started leading tours past here 13 years ago, this house does not like to be photographed after the sun goes down. Anybody get a decent picture yet?
Hey y'all, so you clearly made it to the end of this vlog, and I appreciate you for watching till this far because I know the vlog is kind of all over the place, but I just wanted to show you guys this spooky experience that I had going on this great ghost tour that I did in Williamsburg, Virginia. It was a great time, a spooky little event, but yeah, I just came because I wanted to close out the video and to tell you guys not to forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I mean, you might as well, you made it this far into the video. So just go ahead and click subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. And I will see you guys in the next video. It will be way better than this video. I'm sorry that it's all over the place like I said, but it's okay because the next video will be better. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. Bye, you guys. Do you like my makeup? I did it myself. Clap for me. It's like, no, don't clap for me. But I mean, you could if you wanted to. Slightly stop.